as the real daughter after being left in the orphanage for 8 years. My parents finally decided to bring me home when the expensive car stopped in front of the orphanage. I was handing out snacks to the children. Freya, I told you before, once Phoebe got into college and became stronger inside, we'd bring you home. I came to pick you up. I frowned, looking at the strange woman standing in front of me. Beside, I know you blame Mom, but Phoebe feels insecure because she isn't our real daughter. You, on the other hand, were born with everything. We just let you enjoy it a little later. It's been hard for you staying here for 8 years. When you come home, we'll make it up to you. The woman kept talking, telling me not to argue with someone named Phoebe. I raised my hand to stop her. Wait a minute, who are you? It was ridiculous. A stranger claiming she had come to take me home. I already had new parents 8 years ago. The woman froze under my unfamiliar gaze, then turned and let out a soft laugh. You've stayed in the orphanage for 8 years and are still this stubborn. It seems that even if Phoebe has been spoiled by your father and me, you still won't let her push you around. From now on, you'll be her older sister. You must take care of her and never let anyone bully her. In my heart, you're both just as important. Listening to her biased words that could fill an ocean, I finally remembered who she was. Claudia Romero, my biological mother. After 8 years apart, she felt like nothing more than a stranger to me. This is Romero. When you left me at the orphanage, did you ever think that I might have already found a new family? I was healthy, so it was natural for the orphanage to help me find an adoptive home. Claudia stepped forward, reaching out to touch my head, but I moved away from her hand. I told the director you were only placed here for a while, that you had real parents who would never adopt you. Besides, you were already 10 back then, a child from the mountains, poor in studies with no skills, wild and rough. No one would want you. You're 18 now, still without schooling. Other than going home, do you plan to stay in this orphanage forever? My biological mother's face stayed calm as she stripped me of all worth with her words. When it was revealed that Phoebe Romero and I had been switched at birth, they found me right away. The day before, they hugged me and said I had suffered enough, but the next day, because Phoebe wanted to run away from home, they sent me here instead and left me to survive on my own. And I never thought that the son of the richest man in the city would throw a tantrum about wanting a sister. And when he came to the orphanage, he picked me the moment he saw me. At that time, I was pinning down a boy who had bullied me and beating him up. This little sister is really something else. I can tell right away she's meant to be my sister. And just like that, I became the child of the richest family. You've got such a bad temper. All these years, you haven't even called us once. But I know deep down you still think of your parents. Otherwise, why would you have personally knitted a scarf for me? You still care about your mom and dad. I almost laughed. A large part of the orphanage's expenses came from donations, including those from the Romero family. Every year, the orphanage sent handmade gifts as a token of thanks. When I first came to the orphanage, I knitted a scarf only to complete an assigned task. The dean must have taken it and claimed it was made, especially for them, hoping they would take me home. I honestly felt there was nothing to say to someone I hadn't seen in 8 years. Claudia only thought I was shy. You've waited 8 years and now you're finally reunited with us. You must be happy. Your dad and I have been waiting for this day for so long. Once Phoebe's school entrance banquet ends next week, I'll come to bring you home. The dean who had rushed over, stood nearby listening quietly, but unable to find a chance to speak. Claudia kept talking, telling the people to unload the gifts from the car. You should dress up properly. Don't look like a beggar. I looked down at my simple, practical sportswear chosen because it was comfortable and easy to wash. How did that make me look like a beggar? The motorcade outside soon drove away again. The dean let out a sigh of relief. Mrs. Romero still doesn't know you've been adopted. For you, Walker, I clearly sent her a message. I kept handing out snacks. It doesn't matter. She's just a stranger. Dean, please store those gifts in the warehouse. They'll make a nice treat for the children. After finishing my chores at the orphanage, I remembered that the birthday gift I had ordered for my mom should be ready by now. There were only a few luxury jewelry stores in town, and I honestly didn't expect to run into Claudia. There she was, sitting on the sofa listening to the manager introduce jewelry. When she saw me, she stood up in surprise. You silly child. Did you miss your mother? Were you afraid I wouldn't come to pick you up? So you came to check for yourself? A dull ache formed in my head. When did she start talking to herself like this? It was better not to deal with someone acting like that, so I tried to walk past her and head to the counter to pick up my order, but she stopped me. Freya, I have to say, when you come to such a nice place, at least pay attention to what you wear. Why didn't you put on the outfit I brought this morning? Coming here dressed like this is really embarrassing. Makes you look so plain. I was furious. She had just insulted how I was raised. It was the first time anyone had ever questioned my manners. I lowered my voice, calm and cold. Please, move aside. I'm here to get my jewelry. Claudia looked uneasy at my impatient tone. So, you're still upset because your father and I sent you to the orphanage? Haven't we already explained it? Why are you still being so small-minded? It's not nice at all. You're nothing like Phoebe. Mom, a gentle hand held her arm. A bright and elegant girl stood beside her, carrying the air of someone born into wealth. So, this is Sister Freya. I wondered which school Freya attended and what she had learned. As for me, though not perfect, I tried everything zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Oh, I almost forgot. Freya grew up in an orphanage. You must have worked really hard to get into college, right? Phoebe's tone carried a clear mix of pride and mockery. I don't remember having any sisters. Don't go around claiming that. I looked at the woman pretending to be the victim after taking all the benefits for herself. When the manager brought out my customized jewelry, I brushed past Phoebe, yet she fell to the floor with a loud cry. Claudia stared at me, shocked. I can't believe your temper has only gotten worse over the past 8 years. If you had returned 8 years ago, would you have killed someone by now? She was completely unreasonable. She kept standing in my way, talking non-stop. Claudia, I was adopted by another family 8 years ago. I only came today to pick up my jewelry, not to look for you. My parents have treated me with love as if I were their own daughter. I have no wish to be yours. Claudia's face turned completely cold. What nonsense are you saying? Your mother is standing right here. Even if you're joking, there should be a limit. Yet a hint of panic flashed in her eyes. The daughter she hadn't seen for 8 years now felt like a stranger, as if something precious had slipped from her hands. Seeing no one pay her attention, Phoebe slowly got up from the floor. Mom, maybe I shouldn't stay at home anymore. The family isn't mine. Everything I have once belonged to Freya. It's only right that I give it back. As she spoke, she began taking off her jewelry. Here, these are yours. I just have one small request. Can I still be your daughter? Her voice sounded heartbreakingly soft. Claudia's eyes were filled with visible sorrow. Enough. Phoebe is already being so humble. What more do you want? She only wishes to stay with us as our daughter. Why can't you accept that? Phoebe held onto the angry Claudia, looking heartbreakingly fragile. She offered the earrings, necklace, and ring she had just removed with both hands. Freya probably hasn't seen jewelry this fine before. Any one of these costs more than you could earn in a lifetime. I'm not trying to show off how well Mom and Dad treat me, but since you're coming home, don't upset Mom. Her words hinted that I was making a scene for money. I looked down at her gifts, jewelry like that my brother could buy me a room full of it. I gestured for the manager to bring my order. When I opened the box, a green hollow-carved sapphire and gold hairpin lay inside. I nodded in approval, not to mention the craftsmanship. Even the imperial green sapphire had taken me several auctions to acquire, and the carving alone had used up a large portion of the stone. Years of my savings had gone into it. My mom deserved nothing less than perfection. The manager smiled politely and handed me the receipt to sign. Just as I was about to write my name, a hand suddenly grabbed the hairpin. So it was meant for me after all. Claudia's expression softened at once, while Phoebe spoke up beside her. I didn't expect this store to actually use glass for jewelry. It looks almost real, Mom. Even though Freya's gift is cheap, it's still her thought that matters. I was stunned. How did my fine imperial green sapphire hairpin suddenly become glass? Was it because it looked too perfect to seem real? Phoebe reached out, trying to place the hairpin in her own hair, something that had already been touched by someone else. How could I give that to Mom? Give it back to me. In the struggle, Phoebe turned her back to Claudia and gave me a faint smile before letting go. My years of quick reflexes kicked in, and before the hairpin hit the ground, I caught it. I'm really sorry, Freya. I accidentally lost my grip. Before she could finish, I slapped her hard across the face. She fell to the floor, a tooth flying out. Now she truly couldn't smile anymore. Claudia lifted her hand to defend Phoebe, but I pushed her down onto the sofa. It's just a hairpin. What's wrong with your sister wearing it? It was meant for me anyway. What's mine is also Phoebe's. She completely lost her usual composure, shouting at me in anger. I took the silk cloth the manager handed me and gently wiped the hairpin. Is your name engraved on it? Yet you still claim it's yours. How self-centered. Claudia stared at me, taken aback. Didn't he say it was custom-made for your mother? If not me, then who else could your mother be? I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up a call. Hello, Mom. I'm heading home now. You don't need to come pick me up. After signing the receipt, I gathered my things and turned to leave. Freya. Claudia grabbed my hand tightly, refusing to let go. You actually called someone else, Mom? Did you really find new parents? The dean never mentioned that. Judging by your clothes, they must not be rich. Probably just workers, earning 4,000 or 5,000 a month, barely getting by. She gritted her teeth, her eyes full of resentment toward me. Cut ties with those ridiculous people right now. It's shameful. Counting the ones in the mountains, you've already had 3 sets of parents. What decent girl has 3 sets of parents? If you don't handle this properly, don't blame me for stepping in to fix it. Claudia's face turned cold as she threatened me. Oh, I'm so scared, I said with a hint of Mockery. Why don't you come home with me? And say that to their faces? Claudia's grip on my wrist tightened. The jewelry store had gone very quiet. The manager was focused intensely on a display case. He had already arranged twice. Claudia's face moved through several things. Surprise, calculation, and then something that was almost triumph, as though she had decided that walking into my home and intimidating an ordinary family was well within her capabilities. She was wearing the expression of someone who has confused wealth with power so many times she can no longer tell them apart. Fine, she said. My brother's car was already in the driveway when we arrived. Dylan Walker, 24, currently the acting head of Walker Industries because our grandfather had decided he wanted to spend his retirement actually retiring. He had seen me grow from a 10-year-old who had knocked a boy twice her size flat on the orphanage ground to whatever I was now. And he had always said those two versions of me were not as different as people assumed. He was standing at the kitchen island eating an apple when Claudia walked into her house. I watched him take in the situation without any visible change of expression. That was the thing about Dylan. He processed quickly and showed nothing until he chose to. Claudia walked in and looked around. I had given her no warning about the house, no context. She had assumed from my clothes and my composure and the years in an orphanage that wherever I lived would be humble. People tend to see what they expect to see. The Walker house was not humble. It was not ostentatious either. Our mother had spent 30 years collecting furniture and art that she actually loved, and the result was a house that felt both genuinely warm and quietly, unmistakably significant. The kind of home that people from Claudia's circles would recognize immediately. She stopped walking. Phoebe, who had followed us from the jewelry store at a distance, stopped behind her. Dylan looked at Claudia, then at Phoebe, then at me. The Morrow family, I assume he said. Claudia's posture shifted slightly. You know us? I know of you. He set the apple down. Freya has never mentioned you, but I did some reading when Mom told me you'd shown up at the orphanage. Claudia's chin went up. I'm Freya's mother. No, Dylan said it the way he said most things, without heat, simply as a statement of fact. You're the woman who left her at an orphanage at 10 years old. Our mother is the woman who raised her. Our mother came downstairs. Eleanor Walker was not what Claudia had been expecting. She was 61 years old and had the particular quality of someone who has never needed to prove anything to anyone because she had long since stopped measuring herself against other people's standards. She wore a soft gray cardigan, and her hair was silver, and she moved through the house with the ease of someone completely at home in her own skin. She looked at Claudia and Phoebe and then at me, and what she registered was not the drama, but whether I was okay. Are you all right? She asked me. Fine, I said. They insisted on coming. She nodded and turned her attention to Claudia with a kind of graceful directness that made it impossible to claim you'd been dismissed. I'm Eleanor Walker. Can I offer you tea? Claudia blinked. She had arrived prepared for confrontation and had been offered hospitality instead, which temporarily dismantled her. Yes, thank you. They sat in the living room. Dylan stayed standing. Isette, beside my mother, Claudia had come to reclaim me. She had probably rehearsed a version of this conversation in which my adoptive family was defensive and uncertain, in which I was conflicted and pulled between two worlds, in which her biological claim gave her automatic moral authority. What she found was a woman who was not threatened by her and a brother who was already 2 steps ahead and a daughter who genuinely did not need her. Freya has already told me she was adopted, Claudia said, looking at my mother. But biology is biology. She's my real daughter. She's our real daughter, my mother said pleasantly, legally and in every other sense. But she came from me. She came from an orphanage where she lived for 8 years while you raised someone else. My mother set down her teacup. I say that without judgment. I understand families make difficult choices under difficult circumstances. What I don't understand is why that choice entitles you to a relationship she hasn't chosen to have. Claudia's lips pressed together. Phoebe had been quiet since entering the house. She was looking at the room with an expression I recognized from the jewelry store. The specific expression of someone who is rapidly recalculating what they are dealing with and finding the numbers worse than expected. Freya has always been stubborn, Claudia said. She doesn't understand what's best for her. She is 18 years old, Dylan said, and she was running this orphanage's volunteer program at 16. She doesn't need anyone to manage her. Understanding. You've given her too much independence. That's part of the problem. The room went quiet. My mother looked at Claudia for a moment. With respect, she said, you don't know my daughter. The phrase my daughter landed in the room and stayed there. Claudia heard it. Something in her face shifted. The specific shift of a person who has just understood what they have actually lost. Not abstractly, but concretely. Not in principle, but in this exact room with these exact people. Phoebe had been constructing something behind her stillness. I noticed it the way I noticed most things. Not dramatically, just as information. She had been watching the room since she arrived. Watching how my mother and Dylan spoke to me. Watching how I sat and didn't perform discomfort. Watching the way Dylan's presence in the room was protective without being aggressive. She was recalculating. A few weeks after that visit, she began a quiet campaign. She told mutual acquaintances of the Romero and Walker families that I had grown up emotionally disturbed from the orphanage years and that my adoptive family had done their best, but the damage was visible. She told this to people who had no reason to doubt her. She was beautiful and polished and spoke with the gentle concern of someone who hated to have to share difficult information. She also tried to circulate a story that our grandfather Walker, who was technically still the patriarch, had health issues that made the Walker family's current business position unstable. This was a more targeted move, aimed at business contacts rather than social circles. Dylan found out about the business rumors within a week. He didn't tell me immediately. He gathered the specific chain of information and confirmed the origin, and then he told me on a Wednesday evening with a calm manner of someone presenting a project update. It came from Phoebe, I said. Yes, I thought about Phoebe in the jewelry store dropping the hairpin and smiling at me before letting go. The smile had been too small for Claudia to see. It had been entirely for me. What are you going to do? I asked. Eva. Already done it, Dylan said. The contacts she approached have been properly informed about the actual status of Walker Industries, and grandfather gave a public statement this morning about his continuing role in company oversight. That's more than she deserved. The business contacts don't know that. They just need accurate information. He paused. As for the social circles, I thought I'd let you decide. I considered. Leave it, I said. People who believe she knows me better than she does aren't people I needed Anyway, my mother got sick in October. Not seriously, a respiratory infection that the doctor treated efficiently, but which exhausted her for a full week. She ran a low fever and her energy was poor, and she needed rest. I stayed, not because anyone asked me to, because there was no version of events in which I was anywhere else. I slept on the chaise in her room the first 2 nights, in case she needed water or her temperature checked. I made the soup the doctor recommended. I found the audio books she liked and played them quietly while she rested. When she was strong enough to sit up, I sat beside her and we talked about nothing in particular. The garden, a documentary she had been meaning to watch, whether Dylan needed a haircut. On the 3rd day, Claudia came. Dylan had not told her our mother was ill. Claudia had heard through someone the network of information that exists in a city of a certain size, where enough people know enough people, and news travels. She came, I think, to see if the illness created an opening. She rang the bell, and I answered the door. She saw me immediately, the tiredness under my eyes from 2 nights of poor sleep, the specific alertness of someone who has been on watch. What's happened? She asked. Mom's been unwell. She's recovering. Can I see her? I looked at her. She doesn't know you. She knows I'm your mother. She knows you're the woman I told her about from the orphanage. She has no desire to meet you, as far as I'm aware. I kept my voice even. This isn't a good time. Claudia stood on the step, and for a moment I thought she would push it, would invoke blood right or maternal authority or some other claim. She didn't. She looked at me for a long moment, at the tiredness I wasn't hiding, at the domestic ease with which I stood in this doorway, at the total absence of any indication that her presence here created any meaningful pull. You really love her, she said. The sentence was simple and stripped of performance. Yes, I said. More than you ever. She stopped. I didn't get the chance to love you. I said. You made a choice, and I made a life with what was left. That's all it was. My mother, 2 days later, was well enough to sit in the garden. She had her tea, and I had mine, and the October light was the low gold kind that makes everything look like it's in a painting. She asked me about Claudia's visit, and I told her simply what had been said. She listened. When I finished, she set down her cup and looked at the garden for a while. Do you ever wish things had been different? She asked, not probing, genuinely wondering. Sometimes, I said. When I was younger, I used to think about what it would have been like if they'd kept me, whether I would have been different. I thought about it. I don't anymore. Why not? Because whoever I would have been in that house isn't who I am. I looked at her, and I like who I am. She smiled. It was the specific smile of a mother who has given a child exactly the things she hoped she was giving them, and has only just found out it worked. Phoebe's public collapse was not dramatic. The most effective collapses rarely are. They happen through accumulation, through enough people seeing enough inconsistencies in enough moments until the image can no longer hold its own weight. The business rumors she had spread were traced back to her by people whose business it was to trace such things. Dylan had been quiet about the source, but the people he had informed had their own networks and information moves. The social stories about my supposed emotional damage began to be tested against actual observations of me by people who had met me, and the observations didn't match. And then there was the footage. The jewelry store had cameras. The incident with a hairpin had been caught clearly. Phoebe's deliberate smile before releasing her grip, the calculated quality of the fall Dylan had requested. The footage when I told him what happened. He had been holding it. He released it quietly to one person who shared it with a second who discussed it in a context where it was heard by 8 more. No announcement, no dramatic. Upolat, just the footage circulating among people who had been hearing Phoebe's version of events. The specific image of Phoebe turning her back to Claudia and smiling at me before dropping the hairpin was the kind of thing that one scene couldn't be unseen. Claudia called me in November. Her voice was different from any version of it I had heard before, quieter, stripped of the performance of a competence that she usually carried. She said she had found out about Phoebe, but enough. She had found a message Phoebe had sent to a friend 3 years ago before Freya's return had become relevant, in which Phoebe described her strategy for maintaining her position in the family. As long as Mom believes I'm fragile, she'll never look too closely at anyone else. It was not sophisticated. Most damage isn't. Claudia had read that message and had then sat with the memory of every moment she had chosen Phoebe's emotional stability over her actual child's welfare. Every time Phoebe had cried at the right moment, every time Claudia had redirected her attention away from Freya's rights and toward Phoebe's feelings. She didn't say any of this on the phone. She just said she needed to talk. We met at a cafe, which felt neutral enough. She looked like the past month had been expensive. She told me what she had found. She told me she had confronted Phoebe and that the confrontation had not gone well. She told me she had spoken to her husband and that he had his own things to process. I listened to all of it. When she finished, she looked at me with the specific helplessness of someone who has finally understood the full dimensions of a thing they cannot undo. I can only say I'm sorry, she said. I know it's not enough. No, I agreed. It's not. But you're okay. She said it like a small consolation she was offering herself. You're more than okay. I'm fine. I said, I've been fine for a long time. She looked at her hands. I used to imagine you were struggling somewhere. She said, is that terrible to admit? I think part of me needed you to be struggling, because if you were fine, then I'd have to accept that what we did didn't matter to you. It mattered, I said. For years, it mattered enormously. I used to think about you. I used to make up reasons why you'd made the choices you made. I kept my voice steady, but I stopped waiting for you to remember me. And eventually I stopped needing you too. Her eyes went red. I thought about the 9-year-old version of me who had hugged herself to sleep in a narrow orphanage bed, making up stories about why her parents were coming, who had learned to stop expecting the sound of AA outside, who had redirected that longing sideways into other people, into work, into the small boy who had wanted to be her younger sibling, and the older boy who had decided she was family before he knew her name. I didn't have anger for Claudia anymore. I had something more permanent, which was simply the absence of need. The last time I saw Claudia in any meaningful sense was the following spring. My mother had recovered fully and was attending a charity gala that the Walker family supported annually. We arrived together, my mother, Dylan, myself, and grandfather Walker, who was 90 years old and terrifying in a tuxedo, and still had the sharpest handshake in any room. The Romero family was there. They moved in the same circles or had moved in adjacent ones. Claudia was with her husband, Elliot Romero, who I had never met and who looked like a man who had recently been informed of several things he wished he hadn't known. Phoebe was not there. I had heard she was in the process of moving to another city, the specific social architecture she had, built in this one, had become unlivable. Claudia saw me across the room. I saw her see me. My mother's hand was on my arm. She was greeting an old friend, and Dylan was to my left, and grandfather had already made his way toward the bar. Claudia walked toward me. I waited. She stopped a few feet away. She looked at my mother, who glanced at her with polite acknowledgement and then returned her attention to her friend. Because my mother was not a woman who made scenes or gave anyone more weight than they deserved. Freya, Claudia said. Mrs. Romero. Something passed through her face at the title. She had probably expected me to say something else after all this time, something warmer, some small concession to the biology between us. I wanted to. She stopped. I just wanted you to know that. I understand now, all of it. I understand what we did, and I understand that we can't take it back. And I don't expect you to. Another stop. I just didn't want to see you and say nothing. I looked at her. I thought about the orphanage, the scarf. I admitted that the dean had repurposed as a gesture of connection, the gifts Claudia had brought that I'd sent to the warehouse, the hairpin I'd spent years of savings on because my mother deserved perfection. You're my real daughter, Claudia said. It came out like a last attempt. I looked at her for a long moment. A real daughter isn't someone you remember after 8 years. I said, a real daughter is someone you choose. Her face broke open, not dramatically, just quietly, in the way of someone whose last scaffold has come down. I turned. My mother was beside me. She had finished her conversation and had drifted back, and she was looking at me with the steadiness she always had, the warmth that had nothing to prove and nothing to perform. Ready? She asked. Yes, I said. Let's go home, Mom. I took her arm, and we walked together into the rest of the evening. Behind me, I didn't hear anything. I didn't turn around to check. The things you finished with don't need a final look. They just need you to keep walking.